There's something quietly sacred about stepping into your garden in the early morning light. The air is cool, the soil still holds the memory of night, and everything feels possible, even if your knees crack when you crouch or your hands carry the stories of decades. You don't need a young body to garden well. You just need a gentle spirit, a little patience, and, maybe surprisingly, a box of baking soda. Yes, that same humble box tucked near your kitchen sink. You may have used it to freshen your fridge or soothe an upset stomach. But out in the garden, that little white powder becomes something else entirely. A kind of quiet helper, the kind we gardeners love most. I didn't believe it myself at first. But a few seasons back, after trying every spray and soil booster on the shelf, I found that some of my best results came not from store-bought fixes, but from old-fashioned pantry-born wisdom. Wisdom passed down in whispers, not written on flashy labels. And baking soda, my friend, is one of those whispers. So if you've ever looked at your garden and thought there must be a simpler way, you're not alone. Whether you garden from a patio chair, a raised bed, or with the help of a neighbor's grandchild, today's journey is for you. We're about to explore 15 ways baking soda can gently transform your garden. These are not high-tech tricks or back-breaking chores. They're small, satisfying steps ideal for older hands, tired backs, and modest budgets. And most importantly, they're real. I've done them. Others in our little community have done them. And now you can too. So pour yourself a glass of something cold, settle into that favorite chair, and let's walk through the garden together. You'll be surprised what a teaspoon of white powder can do when it's used with wisdom, not waste. Wedden, stop powdery mildew without harsh chemicals. I remember the first time I spotted powdery mildew. It was on my zucchini right at the peak of summer. I thought someone had dropped powdered sugar on the leaves. But as I leaned closer, I realized it wasn't sweetness. It was sickness. A fine white dust had settled across the foliage, and my poor plant looked like it was fading right before my eyes. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Powdery mildew is one of the most common garden ailments, especially in warm, humid weather. And while garden centers offer dozens of strong-smelling sprays and bottles full of warnings, I found a gentler way. And it's likely already in your home. Just mix a teaspoon of baking soda, a quart of water, and a few drops of mild dish soap. Something gentle like what you'd use on your hands. Pour it into a spray bottle, shake it gently, and mist it across the leaves. Both sides, top and bottom. That's where those sneaky spores like to hide like dust settling on a forgotten bookshelf. Now here's the part that's often overlooked: timing. Early morning or late evening is best. If you spray during peak sun, your leaves might burn, and trust me, it's not a mistake you want to repeat. I've learned that the sun is a friend to us gardeners, but not always to wet leaves. For those of us who'd rather spend our energy growing than correcting, this simple mixture works beautifully. It doesn't just fight mildew, it helps us avoid the guilt of using chemicals we don't feel good about, especially when our grandkids or pets might be roaming the same patch of earth. This gentle spray feels like something from another time, a reminder that the best solutions are often the simplest. Like us, baking soda may not look flashy, but with the right touch, it brings life back to what we love. 2. Save your roses without harsh sprays. If you've ever tended to roses, you know they're not just flowers. They're companions. Some remind us of weddings or anniversaries, others of loved ones long gone. My own grandmother had a rose bush by her back steps, and every time it bloomed, the whole porch smelled like peace. That's probably why it hurts a little when those beautiful petals get overshadowed by black spots on the leaves, a fungus that makes the whole plant look like it's been through a storm. Back in the day, I'd run to the store searching for a miracle cure in a bottle. But the strong odors, the price tags, and the warnings printed in tiny letters made me wonder, is there a kinder way? Turns out there is. Mix 1 tablespoon of baking soda with another tablespoon of neem oil or any horticultural oil you have on hand and dilute it into a gallon of water. That's it. A gentle homemade tonic for your roses. Pour it into a spray bottle and mist the leaves every 10 days, being sure to coat both sides. That's where the trouble hides, just like secrets behind lace curtains. What's beautiful about this method is that it doesn't leave a scent or residue. It simply shifts the environment, making it harder for black spot fungus to feel at home. Like changing the music at a party, suddenly the uninvited guests decide it's not their scene. Many of us plant roses not just for beauty, but for memory. A bush in honor of a spouse, a yellow bloom that echoes a favorite dress. These aren't just plants, they're pages of our story. And they deserve care that's thoughtful, not toxic. So next time your roses look a little tired, reach for the pantry before the poison. Sometimes the simplest tools like baking soda protect what's most meaningful in the gentlest way. 3. Check your soil's personality with a spoon. Over the years, I've learned that the real secrets of a garden aren't found above ground. They're buried deep in the soil. That dark, crumbly mix beneath our feet carries more wisdom than most books. And just like people's soil has its own personality, some are acidic and moody, others more balanced and easygoing. If you've ever had a plant that just wouldn't thrive no matter how well you watered or how much you fussed, the answer might lie in its pH. Now I know what you're thinking, I'm not running a science lab out here. And you're right. But testing your soil's pH doesn't have to involve goggles or gadgets. All you need is a spoon, a bowl, some water, and yes, baking soda. Here's what you do. Scoop about a tablespoon of soil from your garden into a small bowl. Add just enough water to make it a muddy paste. Then sprinkle in half a teaspoon of baking soda. If you see it fizz, bubble, or foam like a child's volcano experiment, that means your soil is acidic. No reaction. Then your soil leans more alkaline. Why does this matter? Because different plants speak different soil languages. Blueberries and azaleas prefer acidic soil, while lettuces and beans are more at home in neutral ground. If the pH is off, it's like feeding someone a 5-course meal in a language they don't understand. The nutrients just won't get through. This quick test takes 2 minutes and no bending beyond what a chair and a spoon can handle. And it's worth it. Because the moment you understand your soil's personality, you stop guessing and start gardening with purpose. I often say soil is like a pair of shoes. If it doesn't fit right, even the strongest plant will limp. So before you plant another seed, take a moment, grab your spoon, and let your garden speak. You might just learn something new even after all these years. 4. Bring balance back to the earth. 1 cup at a time. Let's say you've done the little baking soda test and discovered your soil leans a bit too acidic. Don't panic, it happens to the best of us. Years of rain, piles of pine needles, and even compost can quietly tip the balance. It doesn't mean your garden is broken. It just means it needs a nudge. And thankfully, there's a gentle way to do just that. Instead of reaching for lime or heavy amendments, you can simply dissolve a tablespoon of baking soda into a gallon of water. Water your soil with this blend every few weeks, not the leaves, just the base of your plants. Be light but thorough. This method raises the pH, gently giving your soil a boost without overwhelming the ecosystem living beneath. But here's the golden rule. Only do this if your test showed a real acidity issue. Baking soda, like most things in life, is best used with intention, not habit. Too much can disturb the beneficial microbes that help your plants grow strong, and those little guys are your unseen allies working quietly day and night. In my own garden, this trick gave my beets and broccoli a noticeable lift. Thicker stems, fuller leaves, and a sturdiness that felt proud. Not flashy, just quietly strong. Kind of like the way we aim to be in our golden years. It reminded me of cooking. Add just enough seasoning and the whole dish comes alive. Overdo it and the flavor disappears beneath the salt. Gardening works the same way. The right amount of help delivered kindly goes a long way. So if your garden seems to be struggling without a clear reason, maybe all it needs is a little more balance and a little less guessing. Sometimes healing the soil is just about listening better, not working harder. 5. Make your tomatoes taste like home again. There's nothing quite like the taste of a homegrown tomato. Not the kind from the store, the real kind. The kind that smells like sunshine when you slice it open, the kind that makes you close your eyes after the first bite, because suddenly you're back in your grandmother's kitchen or standing barefoot in the garden of your first home. But lately, have you noticed some tomatoes just taste flat? Pretty maybe, but missing that soul. I had a summer like that where the tomatoes looked perfect but tasted like disappointment. It wasn't until a fellow gardener down at the community plot gave me a quiet tip that things changed. Try a little baking soda, she whispered like it was a secret passed down from the garden fairies themselves. Here's how it works. Take a tablespoon of baking soda and gently sprinkle it around the base of each tomato plant. Keep it off the stem, that part's sensitive. Then water the soil so the powder seeps into the roots. What this does is reduce the acidity just enough to encourage sweeter fruit. Not sugary, just balanced. Just right. And you don't need fancy fertilizers or expensive blends. This is simple old-school garden wisdom. Something you can do with a coffee mug in one hand and a wide-brimmed hat shading your face. It's perfect for us seasoned gardeners, those who value taste over yield, who want tomatoes that remind us of something good. A few weeks later, I sliced into one of my better vines and nearly laughed. It tasted like August from a simpler time, like childhood picnics and late suppers on the porch. It brought back flavor and with it joy. So if your tomatoes have lost their spark, don't give up. Try this gentle touch, because sometimes the sweetest things in life just need a little help remembering who they are. 6. Keep the critters away with a kind hand. Every garden, no matter how well loved, has its uninvited guests. Little green aphids, barely visible mites, and those stubborn leaf nibblers who treat our vegetables like an open buffet. I used to think dealing with pests meant holding my breath while spraying something with a label I could barely read. But over time, I found that you don't need a hazmat suit to protect your plants, just a gentler recipe and a little consistency. Here's what I now keep on hand: a teaspoon of baking soda, a quart of water, and a few drops of any cooking oil. Even plain vegetable oil works. Mix them all together, shake well, and spray both sides of your plant leaves, especially the undersides where bugs like to hide. The baking soda helps create a surface that bugs don't like, and the oil helps it stick without being harsh. This mixture won't leave a residue. It won't choke your flowers with fumes. And best of all, you won't need to fumble with gloves or rinse your hands in vinegar afterward. For us older gardeners, that kind of simplicity means everything. I started using it on my kale after finding holes the size of a dime one morning. Within a couple of weeks, the leaves were full again, no drama. Just quiet protection. It felt good knowing I was helping my garden without hurting anything else. No bees lost, no soil damaged. Think of it like hanging a do not disturb sign, not a fight, just a boundary. And if life has taught us anything, it's that boundaries made with kindness often hold the longest. So the next time your plants are under attack, skip the sprays that smell like a science lab. Mix up a bottle of this simple blend and let your garden know you've got its back softly, safely, and without making a fuss. 7. Quiet the compost smell without disturbing the magic. The compost pile. It's not the prettiest corner of the garden, but it might be the most important. That's where old banana peels, wilted lettuce, and last year's leaves turn into black gold, the richest, most nourishing soil you'll ever hold in your hands. But let's be honest, sometimes it doesn't exactly smell like gold. More like something you forgot in the fridge during a heat wave. One summer, my compost bin sat too close to the porch, and every breeze carried a reminder of what I'd had for dinner 3 weeks earlier. I nearly gave up on it until I stumbled on a simple tip that saved my nose and my patience: baking soda. Just a light sprinkle over the top layer of your compost. Not a dump, just a dusting can help neutralize the worst of the odors. It soaks up the smell without interfering with the beautiful, invisible work going on underneath. Because composting isn't just about decay, it's a symphony of bacteria, worms, and time turning yesterday's scraps into tomorrow's blooms. But here's the key: moderation. Too much baking soda can slow down the whole process. It's like adding salt to soup; just enough enhances it, but too much ruins the balance. And in compost, balance is everything: wet and dry, green and brown, fast and slow. I like to think of compost as a garden's retirement plan. What we toss in with trust today becomes something valuable later. And keeping it from smelling like a science experiment, that's just a small courtesy to your nose, your neighbors, and your next batch of tomatoes. So, if your compost gets a little ripe in the heat, try a sprinkle of baking soda. It's a quiet fix, one that keeps the magic going without disrupting the music. 8. Give your gardening gloves a second life. Every seasoned gardener has a favorite pair of gloves. They might be fraying at the edges, stained with years of compost and rose thorns, but they fit just right, like old slippers for your hands. Mine have been with me since I planted my first raised bed. They've hauled mulch, pulled weeds, and held baby carrots with the care of a midwife. But let's be honest, over time, even the most loyal gloves start to smell like last summer's chores. And if you've ever left yours in the garage or buried them under a damp towel, you know the kind of odor I'm talking about. The kind that makes you wonder if it's time to toss them in the trash. Before you do that, try this simple trick. Fill a bowl or bucket with warm water and stir in half a cup of baking soda. Drop your gloves in and let them soak for about half an hour, long enough to sit on the porch, sip your tea, and listen to the birds. When you come back, give them a good rinse and let them dry in the sun. The difference is more than just smell. They feel fresher, softer, like they've let go of the past season and are ready for whatever comes next. And really, isn't that what we all hope for, to be cleaned up without being thrown out? This little ritual is now something I do every spring right before the first planting. It's not just about the gloves. It's a way to say, let's begin again. A small, quiet gesture of care for our tools, our garden, and ourselves. Because we've learned that with the right touch, even the most worn things still have a lot of work left in them. And that includes us. 9. Ease the itch like Grandma used to. I don't know about you, but I can't count the number of times I've come in from the garden with a mystery itch. Maybe it was a mosquito hiding under my sleeve or some invisible leaf that left behind a rash. One minute I'm admiring my dahlias, the next I'm scratching like a kid with chickenpox. It's part of the garden dance, I suppose, beauty in bites. Now these days you could run to the store for creams and gels, but back when I was young, we didn't always have that luxury. My grandmother, who kept roses that bloomed brighter than the 4th of July, had her own remedy. Baking soda, she'd say, tapping the old tin box like it held magic. And she was right. Mix a spoonful of baking soda with just enough water to form a paste thick enough to stick, but soft enough to spread. Dab it on the itchy spot and let it sit. In a few minutes, the sting starts to fade. The redness calms. It doesn't smell like medicine or feel greasy like ointments. It just works quietly, kindly, like most of the best things in life. This has become my go-to after a long day outside. It's especially helpful for us older folks whose skin gets a little more sensitive with time. I even taught my grandkids this trick when they started helping me in the yard. They were amazed something so simple could work so well. There's comfort in remedies that have lasted for generations. They remind us that healing doesn't have to be expensive or complicated, it just has to be thoughtful. So the next time your garden gives you more than a bouquet, reach for the baking soda, not the medicine cabinet. Your skin and your memories will thank you. 10. Help your flowers shine without overdoing it. There's a kind of quiet joy in walking through a blooming garden. Especially as we get older, flowers take on a new kind of meaning. They're no longer just pretty things, they're reflections of time well spent. Each petal, each color is a memory. A soft reward for the days we chose to show up even when our backs didn't want to. But sometimes, no matter how much water or love we give, those flowers just don't bloom like they used to. The petunias hang their heads, the hydrangeas look confused, and even the marigolds seem to hesitate. I used to think it was my fault, maybe I planted too deep or not enough sun. But then I discovered a simple way to give them a lift using, you guessed it, baking soda. For flowers that prefer a more neutral or slightly alkaline soil like geraniums, begonias, or hydrangeas, a mild tonic can work wonders. Dissolve a teaspoon of baking soda into a quart of water and use it to water the soil around your flowers once a month. Not the leaves, just the base. That's where the roots listen. You won't see a miracle overnight, but over a few weeks the blossoms begin to perk up. The colors deepen. It's like your garden takes a deep breath and smiles back at you. And isn't that the moment we wait for, that moment when something you nurtured finally responds, not in words, but in beauty? I've learned that aging is a bit like gardening. You can't force things to bloom. You can only prepare the soil, offer what's needed, and be patient. The flowers will come in their own time and in their own way. So try this little mix and give your blooms the gentle boost they deserve. Because sometimes all it takes is a teaspoon of care to remind your garden and yourself how much life there still is to celebrate. 11. Brighten your garden path without bleach or backache. If you've been gardening for a few seasons or a few decades, chances are your pathways tell a story of their own. The old stepping stones, the bricks worn smooth from years of footsteps, maybe even a catnap spot for a neighbor's tabby. These paths aren't just walkways, they're part of the rhythm of your garden. But over time, moss creeps in, mildew settles, and what was once charming can start to look and feel a little slippery. I used to think my only options were bleach or a pressure washer. But those aren't ideal when your knees don't love crouching and your arms don't love lifting. Plus, bleach near your flower beds or where the grandkids wander, that never sat right with me. So here's what I do now. On a dry day, I sprinkle baking soda generously over the garden path straight from the box. I leave it overnight. It quietly works its way into the crevices while I rest. The next morning, I take a stiff brush and give the surface a good scrub. Not too hard, just enough to loosen the grime. Then a rinse with water, and just like that, the path is clean. No harsh fumes, no noise, no slipping hazards. Just a safer, tidier walk to your roses or tomatoes. I love this method because it honors the pace many of us prefer, slow, steady, and safe. It allows us to take care of our space without wearing ourselves out. And that matters, because gardening should be about joy, not strain. So if your bricks or stones have seen better days, give them this little refresh. You'll be amazed how much brighter your whole garden feels when the path itself starts to shine again. 12. Send ants packing without risking the garden's peace. Ants are a funny bunch. One day your flower bed is pristine. The next, there's a whole colony marching across your lettuce like it's a holiday parade. And while they're not always harmful, they can quickly turn your peaceful garden into a battleground. I've seen them sneak into potted plants, nest beneath mulch, and make themselves at home under my favorite stepping stones. Now, when I was younger, I didn't think twice about grabbing a commercial ant killer. But these days, with birds, bees, curious grandkids, and even more curious dogs sniffing around, I've learned to lean into safer solutions. And baking soda has quietly become my go-to ally. Here's how it works. Mix equal parts baking soda and powdered sugar. Just a spoonful of each. The sugar lures the ants in, it's the sweet invitation. The baking soda, however, disrupts their internal systems once they take it back to the nest. It's a natural, non-toxic way to say this garden is not for you. Is not. Just sprinkle the mix near ant trails or around the base of their hills carefully and away from areas where pets might sniff. I often tuck it into tiny jars with holes poked in the lid like little bait stations hidden behind pots or stones. That way only the ants find it. I remember one summer where ants had taken over my bean bed. Within a week of using this method, the trails were gone. No poison, no stress. Just peace, restored quietly and cleanly. Sometimes the best solutions aren't about fighting harder, just smarter. With a little sweetness and a pinch of wisdom, you can keep your garden serene without disturbing the delicate harmony you've worked so hard to create. 13. Rescue your potted plants. One pinch at a time. If you're anything like me, your potted plants feel like part of the family. Whether they're herbs on the kitchen windowsill or geraniums on the front porch, they're close companions always nearby, always part of your day. But every now and then one starts to droop for no clear reason. The leaves sag, the soil smells a bit sour, and you just know something isn't right. That, my friend, is often the quiet work of root rot. It sneaks up slowly, especially in overwatered containers or pots without great drainage. For us older gardeners who often prefer containers to bending and digging, this can be especially frustrating. I once lost a whole pot of basil to it, and I still think about it when I pass that empty corner of the patio. But there's a gentle way to intervene before it's too late. Just take a small pinch of baking soda, not a heap, just enough to dust the surface of the soil, and sprinkle it lightly across the top. Then water gently and allow the soil to dry out between waterings for a little while. This doesn't just help neutralize excess acidity, it also discourages the fungal growth that leads to root rot in the first place. It's not a miracle fix, but it's a quiet nudge in the right direction, a chance for the roots to breathe again. What I love about this trick is how easy it is. No replanting, no hauling heavy pots, just a sprinkle and a little patience. It reminds me of how we approach aging, less about drastic changes, more about thoughtful adjustments. So if one of your potted friends looks like it's giving up, don't toss it just yet. Try this little rescue, a pinch of baking soda, a bit more airflow, and your quiet presence. You might be surprised how quickly life stirs again. 14. Give old pots a fresh start without bleach or hassle. We gardeners tend to hold on to things. Terracotta pots with chipped rims, old plastic seed trays, and that one ceramic planter that's cracked but still has character. These containers become part of our stories. They've housed our first marigolds, our last tomatoes, and everything in between. But here's the thing, before we reuse them, especially after a long season of soil and moisture, they need a good clean. I used to dread this task. I didn't want to scrub with chemicals or breathe in bleach fumes. And the idea of buying special cleaners for pots, no thank you. That's when I discovered an easier, safer way using just baking soda and vinegar. Fill a bucket or basin with warm water. Add about half a cup of baking soda and a tablespoon of vinegar. It'll fizz for a moment, then settle into a gentle solution. Let your pot soak while you take a break. Maybe flip through a seed catalog or stretch your knees on the porch. After a good soak, give each pot a light scrub with a brush or cloth. Rinse well and let them dry in the sun. This little process does more than clean off dirt. It helps clear away lingering fungi and pathogens that might still be clinging from last season. It gives your new plants a clean slate, literally. I now make this part of my spring routine. There's something peaceful about standing outside, hands in warm water, watching the sun catch on old pottery. It feels like pressing reset not just on the pots, but on the season ahead. So before you tuck fresh soil into old containers, pause for this step. It's not glamorous, but it's grounding. And it reminds us even the most weathered things, pots, people, memories can be made ready again with just a little care. 15. Feed your greens and your sense of accomplishment. Let's end where many gardens begin, with leafy greens. Lettuce, spinach, Swiss chard. Those humble, hardworking plants that feed our bodies and lift our spirits. They're usually the first to sprout and the quickest to harvest, which makes them perfect for senior gardeners. No heavy lifting, no long wait. Just simple, nourishing joy. But even these garden staples can sometimes struggle. Maybe your lettuce looks floppy, your spinach goes yellow too soon, or the leaves just seem tired. I've been there. You water, you watch, you wonder. And then one day I gave them a small weekly boost, and it changed everything. Mix a teaspoon of baking soda into a quart of water. Just that. Once a week, pour this mixture gently around the base of your greens, not on the leaves, but near the roots where the real magic happens. This subtle shift in the soil's pH helps your plants absorb nutrients more efficiently, especially if your soil has become slightly acidic over time. Within a couple of weeks, I noticed a change. The lettuce perked up. The spinach leaves had more color. The chard stood tall, like it had something to say. It wasn't dramatic, just steady improvement. And sometimes that's all we're really hoping for, isn't it? Harvesting your own salad greens isn't just about saving a few dollars. It's about standing outside in the morning light, scissors in hand, knowing that you grew something good with your own hands. That even in a world that moves too fast, you can still choose slowness, care, and growth. So if you've been feeling unsure about whether you've still got it, let this be your proof. One little scoop of baking soda once a week can help your garden and your confidence come alive again. Because gardening isn't just about the plants. It's about what they bring out in us. So there you have it, 15 simple ways to turn a box of baking soda into your garden's quiet companion. It won't solve every problem, but it will offer small miracles, the kind that add up slowly like smiles over the years. And for those of us in our golden season, that kind of gentle help is exactly what we need. I've always believed that a good garden, like a good life, isn't about perfection. It's about presence, about paying attention. We show up, we learn, we adjust. Sometimes things thrive, sometimes they don't. But we keep planting anyway. Baking soda might not seem like much. It's not fancy, it's not expensive, and it's often overlooked. But in the right hands, it becomes a way to care, to heal tired soil, to freshen worn gloves, to protect without poison. And that, dear friend, is something to be proud of. As you look around your garden this week, maybe try just one of these ideas. Sweeten a tomato, brighten a path, soothe a bite. Watch how a tiny effort brings quiet joy. Because this isn't just about gardening. It's about reclaiming beauty through simplicity. It's about remembering that usefulness doesn't fade with age, it just becomes more thoughtful. And I'd love to hear from you. Which of these tips sparked your curiosity? Do you have your own baking soda trick from back in the day? Leave a comment below. Let's keep this little corner of the internet blooming with stories, wisdom, and kindness. Until we meet again, may your garden stay gentle, your hands stay busy, and your heart stay rooted in all that grows with grace. Happy gardening, dear friend.